How's everybody doing? So we're going to get started. People come and go. People watch the recordings of these things. So we're going to get started. So if anybody jumps in, they can just watch the recording. So as I talked about last time, the topic of today is recruiting, managing, onboarding associates, kind of the do's and don'ts, how it should be done. And we'll start with profile. What type of profile should you be looking for with an associate? Which ones, I guess, that I see tend to work out? Okay, so some of this a lot of this is dependent on uh, the practice itself and the posture of the practice. Uh, so we'll start with recruiting a dentist who is in their 60s, 50s, 60s, wants to work a couple days a week. Certainly there's a place for that. If that's what you're looking for, just somebody to kind of fill in a few days, take the load off, this is a great option. But for most people, they're looking for more of I guess, a long-term option, somebody potentially that they could sell the practice to sometimes. So with the older doctors, remember they're very much set in their ways. So this whole idea that you have to be sure that they're going to be a good fit for your practice because you're not going to change them, obviously. So that's the older doctors. The new doctors right out of school, I see this work out. It's not the best option, but it's okay. The problems we run into is sometimes they're pretty darn slow clinically. Uh, the other problem that we have is they sometimes still haven't worked out their clinical quality. Well, certainly if they're straight out of school, but I do see them come right out of school and do well right away. So this is an option. So don't be too nervous about getting somebody out of school, although you're going to need a little bit more oversight. We'll talk about the oversight later in the presentation. They'll take a little longer to ramp up. So keep that in mind. And so if you have the time and you don't mind mentoring and you have the energy to mentor, this is an okay option, believe it or not. And if you're not under the gun for somebody to come in and just hit the ground running, this is an okay option. But typically, our associates that we feel can just kind of hit the ground running, do well right out of the gate, tend to be. I've changed it. I used to be 2 to 7 years. Now I'm saying 3 to 6 seems to be the ideal profile from graduation. Okay. Uh, doesn't, like I said, doesn't mean any other profile is off the list. It's just what I see tends to work out. And and people will ask me questions about uh, things like gender. I don't know if we're allowed to say that anymore, but uh, male, female, foreign-born dentists that have trouble with the English language. All these kind of things come up in conversations. To be truthful, I've never seen it be a problem one way or another. Even people that struggle with English. I've had people that were, I think, South Korean, struggled with English and go to Louisiana uh, in kind of the backwoods area and do great, do 150,000 a month. So all these things, I think that they really don't matter. It's going to come down to the things we're going to talk about later that determines really the success of the person. Uh, and by and large, I think most Americans uh, are pretty good people. So, and I think that plays out when I see foreign-born dentists come in that struggle with English. I don't think it's a big problem. So that does come up a lot because we do see them, and they've been rather successful. So, okay, so that's that. Uh, the next thing would be kind of this gender thing, you know, where you've got female dentists that end up wanting to have a family. All that can it does happen, uh, and but they're just as reliable. I get just as many years from a female dentist as I do a male dentist. So this whole idea that you're going to keep a dentist on with you for 10 years is probably not the right thinking. I would say if you got 4 to 5 good years out of somebody that's not going to become a partner, that's a pretty good success. And so, male, female, I don't see a difference, to be honest. So, I would, I would be very open here as far as those kind of criterias in terms of profile. Okay, so those are the things to think about. As far as profile goes, just kind of general profile, those are kind of the things that I want to throw out there. Then you go into sourcing. How do we find them, right? Where do they go? Well, let me tell you where they don't go. Facebook, very low odds there on Facebook. Uh, any other recruiting website, basically other than Indeed, I've struggled to get to work. Now, that doesn't mean that certain areas where ZipRecruiter or something is bigger, that certainly can be, but I can tell you how you can find out is you go on these websites and see the level of activity. So just go on the website, search associate dentist, see how many postings there are, see how new the postings are, and then it'll tell you where the eyeballs are at. And right now, at this current moment, it's Indeed. Now, again, that can change, but the way you evaluate is just go on and look and see how much activity there is. Okay, so Indeed's number one, and there is no number two. I don't have another source in terms of some kind of recruiting website that's reliable. Dentalpost.net in some areas has been okay, but it's very limited regional. Uh, so it really just comes down to Indeed. Okay. Now, how do you get resumes? So what's the expectation? How many resumes should I be looking for, let's say per month on Indeed? If you run on Indeed, you should be getting, uh, I would say 2 a week, 8 a month or more. If you're getting less than that, there's two reasons why. One is if you're in like Northern Michigan, I have people in Northern Michigan, they might get 1 or 2 a month, right? And they're just not going to get a whole bunch, right? But everywhere else, you should be getting about 8 to 10 resumes a month. If you're not, it all comes down to the daily guarantee that you put into the ad. And that's got to be first and foremost in the ad. Okay. And then this question comes up, well, what should I do as the daily guarantee? Well, you only go as high as you need to go to get those 8 to 10 resumes a month that I'm talking about or more. So you only want to go that high, right? Now you can go online and look at your competitors and see what they're posting to get a general idea. But I'm seeing kind of like anywhere between 600 and 1,000, maybe even 1,100 in certain areas be the range. So you're going to fall inside that range. And when you're in a competitive environment, obviously that means you're starting to move up towards that $1,000. Now it's really important that you realize the opportunity that you have, okay, to be able to afford that $1,000. So if you're at $1,000 a day, okay, yeah. If you are at $1,000 a day, they got to be producing around 4,000 a day. So if the daily guarantee gets to that level at 4,000 a day or 1,000 a day, they got to produce 4,000 a day. That's kind of the general math of it. Okay. So you've got to know the opportunity that you have. To produce 4,000 a day, you got to give them at least eight hygiene checks a day and one new patient a day. If you can provide that, that's enough dentistry for them to hit that number. So when you get to 1,000 a day, you kind of get into a scenario where uh, you have to make sure that you've got the patient flow. Okay. And I'm speaking per day because I'm totally fine with, I would say, people working 2 days a week, 3 days a week. Typically steer clear of 1 day a week because of the crown seat issues and becomes a problem. But 2 days, 3 days, totally fine with that scenario. Okay. So if you're hiring a dentist and you don't have 8 hygiene checks a day and one new patient a day to give them, you probably shouldn't be hiring a dentist right at that moment. I would question that logic. Now, there could be a circumstance of why you're doing that, but for the most part, they're not going to hit numbers to where you're going to be profitable off of their production. Okay. So make sure that you don't violate that rule. Okay. Uh, Next is recruiters. Okay, this is professional recruiters. So you got Indeed as a source, and if you're not getting resumes off Indeed, bump up the dollar amount. Okay, it is also helpful if you've had past associates in your office and they've made really good money to tell them that in the ad. You know, previous associate took home $300,000 a year. That's a very good trick, by the way. If you have an exiting associate that did really well in your practice, that's the best trick. Okay, so remember that one when you're putting your ads together. If you have an associate that's done well. Okay, so recruiters. The problem with the recruiters is they're expensive. They're very expensive, but they work. So as a place of last resort, they work. They will get you people. They will they will vet people. It's a good, reliable, and you want to find somebody that's regional, that has a good regional presence in your area. So I can't tell you who you should go contact. It is very much regional and they do work. They're just really expensive. 25 grand, you know, it's expensive. But in a scenario where you've built an associate practice, you've got 2 or 3 associates, and you need to replace one real quick, well, the money that's leaving out the door is way more than 25,000. And you can obviously spend months and months trying to recruit somebody to an office. So give you a range, you know, as far as when we place ads to when we actually have somebody we like. Typically, it's about 2 months. Sometimes it could be three, and sometimes it'd be one. But somewhere in 90 days, you should be able to find somebody. Uh, and that's been pretty consistent. If you're not finding people that fast, you're doing something probably wrong. Like I had a doctor in that Northern Michigan story actually, where they had to replace an associate, and it was kind of an emergency. The associate that was leaving was producing 100,000 a month, and they need to find somebody quick. And we ran the ad, and what we placed in the ad is the exiting associate was making 350,000 a year, or 300, yeah, something like in that neighborhood. And we got two people actually that we found in one in the first month, the second one in 60 days. So a lot of it's marketing, right? The ad itself is marketing. So how it's worded and everything does matter. Okay. So going back to recruiters, they can handle all this for you. Take this off your plate, but it costs a pretty penny. And certainly they spread it out. So once you hire somebody, they'll spread the payments out, that kind of thing. And they guarantee that the associate, usually that they'll guarantee it that they make it a year. And if they don't, they'll find another one. So it's a good option. It's just costly. Okay. So like I said, you should be dealing with people to talk to at this point. Okay. So we're going to kind of go into the interview process and the things that I think are important. Look, you can get into a lot of different ways you like to interview doctors, but this is what my approach. So first is you want to tell them very little about your office when you initially talk to them. The style of dentistry, the type of practice, what type of associate you're looking for, how many patients you have, nothing. You don't want to really tell them anything about your practice when you first make your first contact with them. They might look online and that's fine, but please don't tell them anything about your practice. And so the first question you're going to ask them is what type of practice is your ideal fit? Okay, that's the first question. Tell me what your ideal practice looks like. Okay. And because they don't know your practice, they can't just regurgitate your practice to you. Okay. So this is why this is very important. Okay. Uh, and they're going to kind of go through all that, and you don't want to say really much. You want to be quiet here and let them babble on. Okay. So, and get an idea of what practice they're looking for. And it has to generally fit your practice, right? So if you're not looking for a partner and they're talking about partnerships, if they are looking to do implants in big cases and sedations and you're just a regular practice, not a good fit, or if you're a sedation practice or an implant practice and they don't want to do that, all this stuff potentially could come up in this question, and this is what you should be listening for. Okay, and the next question is what in previous practices you worked at, assuming that they've worked. So when they're out of school, this question doesn't apply. But in the other practices that you've worked for, name some things that you really liked that you would look for in your next practice. And again, this is recorded, and I would definitely go back and make an outline of these questions. Okay, so what are you looking for that you saw in your past practices that you're looking for in your next practice? And again, you want to make sure that your practice has those things. So those things are the things that are important to them. Okay, and then of course, what didn't you like? What things are you looking for, or what things are you looking to avoid in your next practice that you've seen, that you've worked with in past practices? And you're going to get a general sense of their, I guess, their hot buttons, things that they really don't like, and things that are important to them. And it's going to kind of match your practice. Okay. So those are kind of some general questions, and then we kind of go into we're going to ask them what would you consider a good month of production where you worked in the past? Not your best month. And be clear about that. Not your best month, but just a good month. Okay. And they might say, well, just a good month is 60 or 70,000. That has to relatively match what you think you have to offer. Now, I gave you the math before. 8 hygiene checks, one new patient, it's worth 60 grand, 70 grand a month in restorative production. Uh, so if you've got more of that, you can do the math on that. And it kind of has to match up what they think is a good month. Now remember, if they're hitting a good month every month in this is very important. If they're hitting a good month every month in your practice, they will stay with you. It's, that's super important. Okay. What in the past they thought was a great month, if that's just kind of an average month here, the long-term fit is very good. Okay. The other thing is it also tells you what they want to make, because you can just take 28% off of that number and kind of get a general idea of what kind of income they think was really good. It's very important that you can provide an atmosphere where they're happy here, restoratively, in terms of what they produce per month. If you don't, you're going to have a revolving door in the practice. So that'll tell you what they're capable of also, right? How fast they are clinically. And you might want to ask, okay, what's your best month ever? And this will help you gauge their speed a little bit. And certainly you can ask them how much time they like, for certain procedures like crowns and things like that to get an idea of how quick they are. Okay. And you should ask those things. Uh, the next thing is to kind of assess their case presentation style. Okay. And what you're looking for is what you're trying to avoid is a dental zealot. Okay. These are people that, if anybody, where they're an idealist, let's put it that way, that everybody needs everything, everybody should say yes to everything that I'm presenting, and you get this idea that they're not in reality as far as what the average patient's ready to do with people. Okay, and you want to avoid dental zealots. One way you can do this is do mock treatment plans. Give them some x-rays, give them some IO pics, and tell them how they would treatment plan 3 or 4 patients. And kind of go back and forth with them on that. And get an idea if they're a little bit flexible with patients, you know? Uh, and again, you're trying to avoid somebody who is entrenched in their philosophy because you're going to have to mold them to your practice philosophy. Okay. So mock treatment plans. Uh, then you want to ask about ownership. Are they interested in ownership? Now, never talk about ownership in the ad. Mum's the word on ownership. Okay. There's no buy-in potential, even though there might be. Don't put it anywhere and don't talk about it anywhere in the interview process as if it were on the table. I want you to ask them, is ownership important to you? Would you like to be a partner one day? And most people are going to say, yeah. You're going to ask them, what's your timeline on that? And what you're looking to do is weed out the people that are really hell-bent on ownership quickly. Okay? People that I want to be partners really quick, and and you ask them, how important is that to you? If it's super important to them, you want to avoid these people because they got big ideas and they think they are ready to run things and that they're ready to start dictating to everybody how things should be done. And people that are think they're ready for ownership, they're not going to fit in terms of falling into a system and doing it your way. Okay, they're quote unquote, they're not humble. They're ready to go be owners, and I would not bring this person on board if you get the sense that that's really important to them, even if you want to sell the practice to them in a year and a half. The only case that I would entertain this if you're going to sell it to them immediately within the first 6 months, and this is just basically a transitional sale. But if it's like, I don't know, I could be maybe a year and a half, maybe sell part of it, a year part of it. If that's where you're at, I would not entertain this person. Okay. You would have to be sell and walk away in a year, then I would entertain this person. Okay. So ask the ownership question. The next thing you're going to look for is confidence in their speech patterns. Listen to how they speak, and you want to pay attention to uh, their confidence level. Okay. And and just general interaction socially. How do they appear? Uh, and all that stuff has to be a good match. Uh, all right. So those are the main questions that amongst the other ones that you guys would probably normally ask. These are the things that are kind of deal killers for me, and that I try to figure out when I'm dealing with an associate. Then we get down to percentages and those kind of things. It's 25 to 28% of adjusted production. Anything more than that, and you run into problems of making a net yourself off of what they're doing. On East Coast, it can creep up to 29, 30%, and that would be the line. Okay, 30% would be the max I would go. Uh, then there's some negotiations about who pays what for insurance and continuing ed, and sometimes we'll pay half or contribute $1,000 to continuing ed a year, that kind of thing. That's all negotiated. It's not, there's no standard there. Uh, and But I will tell you, in this process of going back and forth with them over the contract, when you finally present a contract or talking numbers, if they're nitpicking the contract, I mean, it's okay to be thorough and have a few questions, and then you answer the questions, and then it seems normal. But when they're really nitpicking the contract, no, they're out. Don't move forward with them. Okay. Because they're going to nitpick everything when they get in the office with you. Okay. So nitpickers are out at that point. Okay. Then we kind of agree upon a contract. We agree upon a percentage. We draw up a contract. They have to be state contracts. Each state's going to be different how they're drawn up. So you got to find a state attorney to draw up a contract. I have a lot of people that don't. I don't know why. It's like a handshake deal. Or they have some old contract. I would suggest getting a lawyer and having it done right. Covenants not to compete and all that kind of stuff. Uh, they got to be in there. And that's the lawyer will know what they can defend in your state. So there's rules on that. That's why each state's different. Okay. And you definitely want to have that. The next step is kind of you bring them in and the expectations, right? So what should you expect from an associate in terms of production per day, the ramp up? Now, it certainly can go faster than this. This is just a rule of thumb. So first month, 1,000 a day, second month, 2,000 a day, third month, 3,000 a day, fourth month, 4,000 a day. That 4,000 a day, it could extend out a month or two, it could be 3,500 a day and then they're 3,800 a day. But by the 6th month, they should be cranking at that 4,000 a day. If they're not, well, we're going to talk about how we help them get there first. And at the end of it, if they're not, it's not a good fit. I can just tell you. So, first thing, always stick them with your best assistant. When you bring on a new associate, take your most trusted assistant, one that's been here the longest, knows what good looks like, and have them, and knows what the verbiage should sound like, and have them with your new associate for the first 90 days. And they are your eyes and ears, and you're to tell them that. If you don't tell them that, they won't tell you anything. And you need to have check-ins with them weekly and get an assessment of the quality, get assessment of the verbiage, how their patient interactions, how's everything going. Okay. So most a trusted assistant. Do not stick them with the new assistant. That's the big mistake. Okay. Uh, and there are your eyes and ears. You should set up these reviews, treatment plan reviews, in the beginning once a week, where you sit down with your new associate and you take some x-rays and you have them treatment plan them, and you kind of get an alignment of how we treatment plan patients in your office. We have to get some alignment. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we can't be radically different. Okay. And of course, when you're in the interview process, you got to make that clear that we got to be close. Okay. And so you're going to do these mock treatment plans once a week. Typically, we're going to do that until you feel like, I hand them 5 treatment plan or 5 x-rays and IOPICs, and it's pretty much what I would do and say. Okay. You want to absolutely do random looks at their work. So they're crown preps. Take a look at the aisle picks of the crown preps and pick them at random to look at. Obviously, make sure your assistants are taking pictures after they're done. Uh, and do random checks. I can promise you, uh, not all, you guys know this, not all dentists are the same. So quite frankly, it can be embarrassing, the quality. So don't make the mistake of not looking. Look randomly. Once a week is fine to sit down for 10 minutes and just look through a couple, three or four, and that's fine. Okay. Uh, all right. So then we get into what you should be working on with their. We've talked about this in the past with case presentation, right? So you got trust, urgency, and case size. With new doctors, it's going to mainly come down to trust. This is their confidence in their speech and how they talk to the patient about their dental needs. They're going to hem and haw and uhs and does and jabber and overtalk. Uh, this tends to be the problem with a new doctor. This is like the number one thing you got to work with them on. Okay. And so when I coach them, we work on a shtick, if you will, of how you wrap it up, of a real direct uh, shtick. This is, you say this to every patient. In other words, you're not winging it at the end. It's very similar. Your speech, how you talk about what they need to do next is going to be similar. And we're going to get that down to where it is like a speech, like they're reading it from a teleprompter. They got to get it down that well. Okay. And so you gotta work with them on this. You can't just leave it to them. A new doctor will not ramp up well if you're not working on this with them, period. Okay. The other thing is kind of working on the urgency a little bit, making sure that they're really presenting the case to the patient of why they should act now, why they shouldn't wait, what's at stake if they wait. That uh, that has to be in the presentation. And then, of course, case size. So all the stuff that we talked about in the past, this is all stuff that you have to work on with them. Okay. And with like Dr. Roy Smith, anybody remember him? He'd been around Whitehall for years, and he told me a story that his shtick, what he would tell patients was identical, so identical that the assistant in the other room knew to turn on the suction or put on the water, something, so that the patient he's talking to doesn't hear the same shtick and go, hey, he just said that to me, you know? That's how canned it got. And it has to get that way. Certainly for doctors that are on the border of non-assertive, it's got to get canned. Their shtick at the end. So it's okay during the exam to wing it and talk through it all. But when you're sitting up and telling the patient what they need to do next, hey, Mrs. Jones, if it were me, let me just tell you what I would do. All that's got to be canned or very, very close. Okay. Uh, so you got to work with them on that, or they'll struggle. Okay. The other thing is there's three things that you've got to make sure that you do correctly with an associate and that you have in place for their success. One is pre-assessing. You want to have the team, by and large, have the case already wrapped up before the associate walks in the room, where the patient already knows what they kind of need roughly and already knows urgency, already kind of determined what Wes is ready for, and so that the handoff is smooth to the associate and it's already wrapped up, meaning all this trust, urgency, case size has all been figured out before the associate walks in the room. Okay. So that's pre-assessing. And again, you want it to the point where all the associate has to do is go, oh yeah, you need a crown in this situation. Absolutely. Well, let's get started on this right away. You want it already to that point, basically. to where the associate, if they had duct tape over their mouth, all they had to do is say this to the what's on the treatment plan. Yes, yes, this is correct, that the patient would act. The closer you get to that, the better. Okay. So that's pre-assessing. And of course, that means you've got to have your best people pre-assessing. And this is another mistake a lot of people make is and this is with new patients. New patients are the most difficult. So with new patients, what happens is they get the B team. New patients get the assistant who has been here 6 months, or they get the hygienist who's got an open schedule because nobody likes her. The hygienist who's really great with people's full, right? Big problem with associates. So you've got to make sure that new patients are flowing through the correct assistants, the correct hygienists, okay? And if you've got to, you got to create blocks in their schedule, or else you're just creating a problem of B team and B team is fit. B team assistants, B team hygienist with a B team doctor. Not that the associates are B team, but typically they're new at this, right? So you got complete B team, and you're going to get horrible results if you put that together that way. Okay. So pre-assessment key. Okay. Same day service has to be functional in the office, meaning it's part of the um, not the morale, the culture of the office. Same day service has to be inbred in the culture of the office because that's the one way we're going to feed them. It's through same day service. It's one way we're going to get them off the ground. Okay. If it's not part of the culture, you're going to struggle to get patients to even want to see them. They'll always say that, oh, I'll just wait until Dr. Eisenbrock is back from Florida and then I'll do it. If you can't offer same day service and say, hey, you can see this associate right now and get it done right now, you'll struggle. Okay. And they'll always just push for uh, the owner doctor. Okay. Number two is this associate has to win the hearts and minds of, or number three, win the hearts and minds of your team. The team has to believe in this new doctor's quality. They have to feel like this is good dentistry. If they don't, they will not sell this associate, and it's over. You might as well fire them right then because your team will just pull the punch. They'll be like, you could see him, but I'd probably wait. They'll do it in their language, and you won't even be able to spot it. And it takes tremendous selling. Remember, you got to teach the team to do this, to sell the associate. Your job is to sell the associate. You're going to see Dr. Smith, and he's wonderful. He's just great. Everybody loves him. You're going to love him too. They have to do that sales pitch. And if this associate kind of loses the trust of the team, they'll stop doing that. And it's over. It's dead. It won't work. Okay. So the team is how you move people off of your schedule onto the associate with their faith and confidence in that new doctor. That's the only way to do it. Okay. So you got to educate them that that's the expectation, but they will stop doing it if they believe that there's a problem with quality or with patient interaction. And once they lose the faith of the team, it's over. You might as well just let them go. Okay. So this is kind of how we walk through it. Obviously, there's many other things that can happen, and other things that curveballs and things, but this is just a general overview that that we uh, that we kind of work through with bringing on an associate. Okay. So is there first, let's go to questions. Anybody got questions on this as I ran through it quickly? How was that good? If anybody's got a question, you got to unmute yourself. Generally speaking, uh, this doesn't always go to plan. So There's always caveats and things that happen. Well, she wanted this, or she wants 29%, and I'm kind of stuck at 28. What do I do? But I really like her, and I've got nobody else. All kinds of curveballs get thrown at you. But I will tell you, as you kind of go through this, there's one thing you want to remember. An associate should be doing well in your office after 4 months. This whole idea they got to be here a year, that's all baloney. Okay. The only exception to that would be a new doctor out of school. That's the only exception. And with them, you might give them up to 8 months as they ramp up. And so you would give them a little bit more leeway. But everybody else, 4 months. And quite frankly, somebody that's been out of school, like I said, for 3 to 6 years, it's month one. They're hitting good numbers. Month one. Okay. So I'll tell you the Michigan story. Okay. So had to find new doctors. One was a little newer, so kind of in that two years out, 1.5 year out of school. Hired her right away. First month, 55,000. And then she kind of inched her way up to 60, I think she was like 63, just under 65, and then 70. And so now she's kind of in the $70,000 range. Okay. The other doctor that we hired a few months later was kind of out of school, I think 4 years. So definitely past that 2 to 3 year range. So I think it was like more like 4 years, and had obviously more experience. First month, 110,000. Like, yeah. So this whole idea they got to ramp up and get to know patients, and you got to like parade them around and introduce them to your patients for 6 months, and that's all baloney. It's all baloney. Yeah. So you got to get the team on board. They got to be pushing for same day service. They got to be pre-assessing, and they got to be selling the associate. Like I said, they got to. Oh, you're gonna love them. If they do all that, it's right away. There's no lag. Very little. Okay. All right. So it sounds like I did a good job. Nobody's got any questions. So feel free that you will get curveballs. Feel free to give me a call. I will take short questions on things like that. So don't be bashful. And I welcome it actually. It's kind of fun. And yeah, so this is the outline. Okay? All right. Thanks everybody. Have a good day.